Good evening. It's about 7:15. I haven't gotten any participation yet. I don't know if email is working properly or not. I've sent out 3 notifications, so I haven't gotten any response, but it's been about 15 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and get started tonight. Kind of a review from last week. I have 2 students, Sherry Brockington and Jennifer Floyd, who have not completed their enrollment verification activity. That can be found on our course overview page. Please go in and do that enrollment verification activity as soon as you can. Otherwise, they will drop you from the course, so make sure that you do that. I also wanted to cover a couple other things that I covered again last week. Under Task Stream Tools, I had a couple of emails this week asking for examples. I have under elementary, middle, and high school examples, I have completed final evidence narratives that contain all components A through E. So if you would go in, if you have questions now, if those aren't clear to you, then please, by all means, call or email me, and I'll walk you through whatever problems that you're having. But these are good examples. Again, they would be helpful to you, I think, in putting together your final evidence narratives, and that's where we should be. Let's look at our weekly schedule here. This week is about leading adult learners, McGregor's X and Y, and Know Thyself. You've got a choice of 3 discussion boards that you can do, 4, 5, and 6. It's time for you to upload CAPI and discussion board for peer review. Go ahead and be getting on that. Remember, the only 2 components that are due in 605, and if you've kept up, are CAPE and SIOP-F. If you haven't kept up, then by all means, start loading many of those as you can, as quickly as you can. You should also, as I said, be putting together your final evidence narratives that go in that last box on your work page for each of the evidences in TaskStream. On the left-hand side of your page, starting with the app cell, you have component A, B, C, D, and E. And then you have a box that just says app cell, and that's where the final evidence narrative goes. It contains all 5 of the components, any attached artifacts that you might have. It's also where you go in and do your summary and descriptors. Also on the TaskStream Tools page, I have a document to help you write your TaskStream summary and descriptors. I also have an example of those summaries and descriptors called Accomplished TaskStream Summary Descriptors. So if you have questions, do not hesitate to call or email me. I'll get right back to you. So that's where we are tonight, is leading adult learners. To that end, a book was mentioned last week, Mindset by Dweck. I did pull that up, if I can find it. Let's see if I still have that. I do. You should be able to see that on your screen now. Let me do a resume share. Okay, stop share. Share screen. Mindset, share screen. All right. This is the book that was mentioned last week, and it does go along with what we are covering right now in terms of leading adult learners. And Mindset, simply the book talks about people believe their basic qualities like their intelligence or their talent will get them through. They're simply fixed traits, and that's what we've talked about. Leadership is learned. It's demonstrated. It's practiced. There are things that you can do to be better leaders. One of those things is to work hard in shared governance, work along with the people that you lead, and you develop your leadership skills. And that's what this book's about, is that just simply intelligence and talent aren't enough. That it takes hard work, and the hard work is servant leadership. Again, servant leadership is the notion that you work along with others and they work with you. That you're participative in your leadership style. You have high expectations for both task and relationships with people. And this book, I do recommend this book. It's also available on audiobooks. It is a good ancillary material for especially for this week's content. So thanks for sharing that with us. Looking at this week's Zoom materials, the first document that I want to go over with you, and this one links back to retention strategies and to a couple of other documents that we're covering this week. Good to great, and that's what we're talking about, moving your school and yourself from good to great. You don't get the opportunity to be a school leader if you're not good. If you don't have talent and intelligence. But when you become great is by working hard and practicing your craft. You can only be good just simply on talent and intelligence alone. It takes hard work to be great. So good to great is about starting with the end in mind, understanding the task, understanding the scope of the task, getting your followers to understand the scope of the task. Now, one of the things that I don't particularly care for in school administration is the 2-hour faculty meeting. If you have that much information to cover, you need to send that to folks, either hard copy or email or both, and let them review that material. Faculty meetings should not be about that much information transmission. You need a different medium than after people have worked hard all day sitting in a school library or auditorium. But you do have to convey to them the scope of the project. But again, with modern technology, there are other ways other than a faculty meeting to get that information to them. But you do need to, for your understanding, for your followers, for the people you're working with, to understand the scope of the project and what the desired outcome of the project is and what the purpose of the project is. And that circles back to what I call the back bounce. All activities that we do in school should be about the bottom line, which is student achievement. And so every project, you need to explain the scope and how it relates back to student achievement. Any project that you're undertaking, any implementation, any program, treatment, or fix that you're trying to implement in your school, you need to give explicit how-to instructions. Don't assume that people will understand how to implement the program with fidelity. You need to tell them what it's going to take and show them and model the behavior that it's going to take to implement with fidelity. Now, what is implement with fidelity? Well, we commonly call that formative assessment. You have formative and you have summative assessment. Formative assessment is assessment of how well the implementation is going. So that's an assessment of the adults, not the summative evaluation generally is the outcomes of the program, treatment, or fix you're trying to put in place. Did it move the needle on test scores for students? But along the way, the evaluations should be summative, should be formative, and those are fidelity checks to make sure that that your followers are implementing the program with fidelity. My favorite example of what I'm talking about is back in my day, in the olden days, when we used to do textbook adoptions. I was an elementary principal a long time ago, and one of the things that we would do yearly is we would do textbook adoption, and the people from the maintenance division would come rolling the books in cases and roll them down to the book room, and they would sit there all year in the boxes unopened. At the end of the year, when the kids took the reading test, we'd say, well, that reading adoption didn't work very well. Well, we don't know if the reading adoption worked or not. We didn't do any fidelity checks along the way to see if anybody was using that reading adoption. So that's an example of implementing with fidelity. Whatever program that you have, whether it be a textbook or whether it be video-based or whether it be curricular-based, you need to make sure your job as an administrator is to make sure that you give explicit how-to instruction. You model that behavior, and you check to make sure that that behavior is being carried out. So that is number 2. See if I can get this to come back on the screen for you here. There we go. So finally. Okay. All right. So start with the end in mind, give explicit how-to instruction, model desired behavior. Number 3, show examples. This is one of those ideas that is difficult to put in practice. Now that sounds a little odd, but it really is. When we talk about show examples, what we need is for teachers to be able to go to other teachers' rooms and see that desired behavior. Just giving them an example on a piece of paper. So what I have seen some more creative principals do is video teachers exhibiting the desired behavior, modeling the desired behavior, implementing with fidelity, video that, and then send that out as a video link where other teachers could watch it, or have teachers on their planning period go and watch and observe other teachers. But you need to find a way to show an example. See, what we're talking about here, the big picture here, is the way to lead change in your school is through programs, treatments, or fixes. Programs are generally school-wide. Treatments are particular subgroups, and fixes are management routine changes. In any of these things that you're trying to affect, programs, treatments, or fixes, you should be able to show examples of what it looks like in reality. Not just like when I give you examples of completed evidence artifacts. Those are actually my interns that are in the program now, or have just finished this spring. They're not some theoretical that you can't really follow. They should be exactly what you're looking for. Your example should be real live examples. And if you're trying to change teaching behavior or instructional behavior inside the classroom, then your example should be somebody on your faculty exhibiting that desired behavior. So you may have to get creative. It's not easy. Sometimes teachers have the same class schedule and the same planning time. It's not easy for them to observe one another. So the examples, you may have to use Zoom or some other video product, WebEx, or just do videos and post those videos online for people, or on YouTube for people to go and watch. So that's what we're talking about there. Monitor and give feedback often. Be positive. Work from the positive, not from the negative. That's one of the questions that I'm going to ask you later on this semester when we cover interviewing. The question will be, if you've got a teacher who is not performing well, should you outline their negatives, or should you start with their positives and then work to the negatives? And of course, the answer is you start with their positive, the things that they do well. So you monitor and give feedback often. That's why most districts are now requiring your administrative team to do at least a 10-minute walkthrough on every teacher every day. Obviously, you can't do formal observations every day, But we are looking, as an institution, as a profession, for school leaders to get into classrooms every day and give feedback in the terms of a walkthrough checklist that you used in your AppTel. Hopefully, when you were looking for best practices in classrooms, hopefully you did some walkthroughs. So, but always remember, in this case, you're looking to work from the positive. Recognize, number 5. Now, recognize is not just calling people out at the faculty meeting and say, what a great job Johnny did last week with this lesson or that week. It is that to some extent, but more importantly, probably than that, is the recognition is when I think of recognition, that I recognize you as a valuable equal partner in this process, and that I will have time for you if you need to come and see me. I will answer your emails. I'll take your phone calls. I will set aside meeting time to be with you. I will recognize your role and how valuable your role is in us achieving our objectives. And so one of the things that I get discouraged about is when I hear my students, and especially my interns, say, my principal never has time for me. Well, it doesn't, that may be the worst thing that you can do as a school leader, is not to recognize somebody's value or worth, that they're not valuable enough to the organization for you to return their phone call or return an email or make time to see them from time to time. So that recognize goes beyond just calling their name out at the faculty meeting. It means that you're there for them, that when they send you an email, you don't just ignore it, that when they ask for a few minutes of your time, you find it. That's what I mean by recognition. And then reward, rewards take many different forms. Probably the most relevant of these forms is through their teacher observations. I get discouraged from time to time when I hear school administrators say, or I hear teachers say that their school administrator says, I don't believe in giving the highest scores. Nobody's accomplished. Nobody is exemplary. And I think back to my own experience with that one, and I'll tell you a quick story about that. I was a high school teacher, and I worked for a really good principal. And he hired a lady to join our science department. I taught more of the physical and mathematical sciences, but she taught more earth science biology. She was a biology teacher by trade, and he hired her. She actually had her time in, but she still had a lot to offer and a lot to give. And she wanted to move it was a kind of a rural, isolated area in western North Carolina, but she wanted to come back there because she was from there and she wanted to be closer to elderly parents. And so he was able to. It was quite a coup to get this lady to come and teach biology for us in the high school. And just after he hired her, late in the summer, just as the school year was starting, he got promoted to assistant superintendent, and we got a new principal. Well, the new principal was one of those folks that nobody deserves the highest scores, and we were just moving into the world of accountability. Basic Ed plan had just been passed. That was 84. And we were changing from the old 4-point scale that you were graded on as a teacher to a 6-point scale, which is a much finer, much better differentiation between the levels. But the new principal said, no, I don't give anybody more than 4s, no matter if it's a 6-point scale. I just don't do that. And so at the end of the year, here I am, I'm probably the worst science, chemistry, physics teacher that we've got. And this lady obviously is the best teacher that we've got. We get exactly the same scores. And so we get straight 4s across the board, which was average at that time. I forget the exact termination, but it was average score. And so she retired. She said, I'm not going to work for somebody that doesn't appreciate what I do. Well, but the point of the story is she had not taught the year before she came to us because she was not A, she was the National Science Teacher of the Year in the United States of America. And she was the one that gets the year sabbatical, gets to travel all over the country and all over the world. Now, if she's not a 6, nobody's a 6. But for her to get the same scores as me was quite insulting. I'm sure it was to her. I mean, this lady was the reigning, defending national champion, the National Science Teacher of the Year. And he gave her a 4 on a 6-point scale. He didn't last very long as principal. He wasn't. This was just part and parcel of the idiocy that he displayed on a regular basis. And so to get to back to our original point here, good to great is about high expectation. You must make sure that if folks do exemplary work, you give them exemplary reward. You give them the scores that they deserve. You don't have some preconceived notion that nobody is this or nobody is that, because sometimes people are this and that. But you give them what they deserve. So good to great is about high expectations. So that's the first document tonight. All right. Let's look at human resources required recommended retention strategies. This is Standard 4, Human Resource Management for School Executives. What can principals do to keep the high flyers at their school? And that's why I just told you the story that I did. Those are the people we want to keep. She was a high flyer. She was a National Science Teacher of the Year. What are you supposed to do to keep those people? The irreplaceables, the top teachers whose experience that you just can't replace. According to North Carolina Standard for School Executives, provide me with regular positive feedback. Goes back to Dale's good to great. Help me identify areas of development, things I need to work on. Give me critical feedback about my performance informally. Again, I need feedback, and I don't need for you. I need for you to tell me how I'm doing in an informal way through walkthroughs, not just at the end of the year at summative evaluation time. Recognize my accomplishments publicly. Yes, call me out to faculty meeting for the good things that I'm done. Tell me that I'm a high flyer and that I'm doing well. Identify opportunities or path for teacher leader roles. And that goes back to your APTEL, where you identified your best practitioner of Marzano's 9 high yield strategies, and you give them the opportunity. The first step of the ladder, according to Whitaker, is to teach other teachers. You give them the opportunity to teach and mentor other teachers. Obviously, there are other opportunities for leadership, school-wide leader roles. The first one, according to Whitaker, is teach other teachers. The second one is to be involved with the school improvement plan. The third one is to be involved with curriculum. The fourth one is to be involved with resources. And the fifth one, the holy grail of being a teacher leader at school leadership is being involved in personnel decisions. And so you've got to give me the opportunity or the path. What launches teachers on that path is having them teach other teachers. That has to be the first step. If they can't teach other teachers, they won't be successful in any of the other 4 roles that I just mentioned. So again, the 5 teacher leader roles in terms of school-wide leadership identified by Todd Whitaker, and you should have this in your APTEL. Again, the first one is teach other teachers. The second one is be involved in the school improvement plan. The third one is be involved in curriculum. The fourth one is be involved in resources, determine who gets what. Resource management is not dividing all the money equally. Resource management is determining what your priorities are and putting money in those areas. And then, of course, the fifth of the 5 teacher leader areas for school-wide leadership is being involved in personnel decisions. Put me in charge of something important. That's one of those 4 things. After it's been determined that you can teach other teachers, then we move you into one of those other 4 areas. We move you up that ladder. And then on resources, provide me with access to additional resources for my classroom. You may have to go out and find resources that are community-based. You may have to find grants, or you may have to find money that from other sources. Now, as I just said, resource management is not dividing the money equally. Sometimes we have to give our higher flyers, if they're doing more important things, we have to give them more money and more resources. We can't just divide it out equally. That does not reward the great ones. So this again is from North Carolina Standards for School Executives, number 4, Human Resource Management. So those are the things that you need to do in order to reward your high flyers and to keep, the good ones, the ones that you want to keep. Now is a good time to kind of burst your bubble. Frederick Hertzberg wrote a lot about motivation, and he basically derived that there are satisfiers and dissatisfiers in terms of job satisfaction. Again, speaks to retention of your best teachers, your best people. That there are satisfiers and dissatisfiers. But here's where I have to burst your bubble. A principal can never be a satisfier. You can only be a dissatisfier. You have to keep that in mind. You need to probably read over this material that I have under Zoom session 2. But again, the notion here is you can't create an environment or job role or position, or you can't satisfy teachers in terms of they come to work every day because of you. It has to be the working conditions, which is their classroom and the environment that they're in. But you can be a dissatisfier if you don't give them the opportunity to grow and to become leaders, school-wide leaders, on that continuum that I just defined by Whitaker. If you don't give them the opportunity to do those things, if you don't look at that retention strategies list, if you treat them as their beginners or your children, rather your peers, again, you can't treat them as if they're your children. You must treat them as if they're your peers. If you don't do those things, do the bad things and not the good, you become a dissatisfier. And they'll leave because of you. They rarely will stay because of you. So, again, you can't be unfortunately, you can't be a satisfier. You can only be a dissatisfier. Okay.